Welcome back to Through the Veil podcast. I'm Elle,
Camille.
and we're here again for part two with Kerry. She's our resident expert on everything near-death experience related.
Not really, but hi. Thanks for having me, Ethan.
30 years of experience. I would say that's pretty in-depth research,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I wish if I had a brain to remember it all now, then we'd be in business. But
I'm going to trust that you can pull out the pertinent pieces when.
we'll do our
So
best.
we left off the last episode with an interesting question that we kind of answered, but we're going to revisit today and kind of get to in more depth. That question was, there are a lot of different experiences people have from all across different beliefs and different backgrounds in near-death experiences, and a lot of people take these visions, these experiences people have as like doctrine, as true fact. And sometimes these experiences contradict each other. Like, how much weight do you think we should give people's experiences when they come back and, share revealed information with us? What should we give credibility to?
Right. I mean, because the very thing that gives me tremendous sense of peace and tranquility and non-fear of death is the fact that you hear these experiences and you want to give them credence. You want to say, wow, this person had an experience on the other side. I can trust what they're saying. They're telling me about what it's like on the other side. But there is a lot of interesting stuff out there. Like I know I was told the day that Christ was coming back, or I don't know, what are some of the ones you guys have seen?
Like how kind of World War III starts. It
Oh
starts
yeah,
in Korea or
Korea.
it starts with, yeah,
I read that too.
yeah,
Probably the
Korea,
same
or there's the
account.
one where the missile gets launched from Iran um to Israel, which I guess we've kind of already seen that happen. Didn't that happen a few weeks ago?
Yeah,
There's been a lot of missiles recently.
a lot of missiles
But
around.
like, this is what I mean about the contradiction. Like, a lot of times people from a different faith background will have an experience that affirms their belief, and then somebody else from a different faith background will have an experience that contradicts that directly. Like, a very common topic is reincarnation. And I know we've kind of touched upon that in the podcast before. And we don't have to go into that today, but like, how do you navigate what to believe and what to kind of like take with a little more salt?
I think that's a tough question. Um, I mentioned this a little bit in the previous podcast. There are times I've gone off and maybe gone on in a direction and I thought, wow, that goes against like maybe what I've been taught in scripturally or in the Bible, or maybe that's different from I don't know, what I was taught in my faith tradition. And I think generally on all of this, firstly, if we're using discernment in our own lives and have learned how to do that, you can often kind of sense that something feels a little bit off. And I just try to avoid going down, those roads. We have to understand that people come in, we talked about this a little bit with their filters and their perspectives, and that's absolutely going to color their opinion of the information that they receive, or even not their opinion, but it's going to maybe even color the information that they receive. So I don't know that I have a great answer for it. I just think that we all have to be really discerning as we're reading or experiencing these. And if it feels funny, trust that and just stick with what you know or feel to be true. And I think I like to just also keep just an open mind. I kind of do like a back pocket thing. Like, gosh, I'm not sure about that. I'm going to put that question in my back pocket. And then maybe someday I'll unveil the scroll in front of God and I'll like go down all the
I get
questions.
it.
And my first,
Catalog those.
like, Cro-Magnon man and dinosaurs, T-Rexes. I want to know,
Yeah.
like, what is,
Periods. Periods. I just need to know. Like, why are they so painful? Why?
oh, oh, yes. Menstrual periods. You're not talking about grammatical ones.
Right. There's those two. What's the purpose of a grammatical period? I don't know.
Yeah, and there have been some fakers, there's people who've written books and or been who are maybe even on trial right now or have been we won't go there, right, Camille?
Right.
There have been people who've done some wacky things in the name of yeah,
Ego.
spiritual insight. And so I think just I don't know.
There's
A
one that
lot of
I read that was really popular in my faith tradition, culturally. Just, it was word was out about it. And I don't know, like I got halfway through and it just started to feel like this experience that he's having is for him personally. And he published it, which, it's fine, but it just really felt like this was his personal experience and it's not like a broadcast to the world. This is what you should expect. This is how everything's going to play out. It was his vision of kind of the end of the world. And then he had some personal experiences with the savior that he put in. But I'm like, this doesn't really fit for me. It just doesn't feel,
Mhm.
especially as he got more personal and was talking about how like he had this in this office building and there was the savior had this office, which could be very symbolic of something. And his office was right next to Jesus's. And I'm like, good for you. But like, this is clearly not literal. Like this is something personal and people are kind of reading things out of context. And I don't know. You just have to be, just read it thinking, okay, this is interesting. And if you're not getting anything out of it, then you can just put it down. So at one point I was just like, yeah, I'm done.
I know what book you're talking about, and they lost me when when he was talking about the lost 10 tribes. Oh yeah, I got lost with the lost 10 tribes, who had cat eyes that were, I think, like purple or green or something
Yeah.
down in
Yeah.
the, yeah. So just use your common sense, and if that something smells funny, throw it out.
Hmm.
I think you make a good point, Camille, too, with like things not being literal or things being personal symbolism. And I believe I stated this, in last week, but um every when you're mortal, there is still a thread of connection, I think, when you have a near-death experience. Most of these people, it's not their time. They get turned back, right? There's a thread that connects your spirit to your physical body. And that connection is very, very strong when you're in your body. And as you begin to pass, as you begin to um, experience death, that thread like thins out and then eventually breaks, and you go through the veil to the other side. If you are suddenly you suddenly make an exit, it's very quick, it's severed, right? A lot of people, especially natural deaths, it happens slowly. There's like a touch
Hmm.
and go moment where they kind of
Yeah.
come in and out of mortality. With near death experiences, I really believe that a lot of these people are experiencing these experiences of the other side while still being attached to mortality. And while we're here, and even sometimes through the veil, I've had this experience with spirits. It's like you still have a filter within your own consciousness that information has to pass through.
Hmm.
And it comes to you within relevance that is meaningful for you. Like you were saying, Camille, that's personal or symbolic or has a message that is meant for you to understand. That doesn't mean that it is an absolute universal solid rock bottom truth to everyone with application,
Yeah.
right? So I think a lot of times people will have these near death experiences and it passes through that bias, that personal bias, that personal filter, if you want to use a less inflammatory word, but it colors the things that we see.
Mhm.
It colors the way that we process the things that we see. And so, and when you come back into the mortal body, memory is fallible. It's
Yeah.
really quite fallible.
Hmm.
Even when you still believe you remember something with crystal clarity. My husband is an attorney and they train on this forever. So do the police. It's like you cannot trust a witness because you can cock yourself into a belief. You have one witness who says, "Yeah, the person was there, they were in a green shirt." And then another witness says, "Yeah, the person was there, they were in a red shirt." And then witness A is like, "Oh yeah, the shirt was red, wasn't it?" It's like, well, was it red or green?
Hmm.
So the human memory really is quite porous, and it's even with things that are sharply imprinted on us. It may not be quite as sharply as we recall it to be. I'm not saying that these people, I'm not throwing doubt on what they say. I'm just saying everything, and I've learned this as a spirit communicator, doing this for several years, talking with so many spirits on the other side. I realize that it comes through my filter in the way that I interpret it. And I have
Hmm.
this string map of theory in my brain of how everything is like the pieces that I put together of how it really works and things, but all of it really is kind of theory. So
Hmm.
we get there and experience it, and
Yeah,
that thread is cut.
right. And since when we're reading near-death experiences, we're not reading experiences where the thread was cut right
Right.
yet, right? Where it's and so yeah, someone can describe, oh, I was in a room and there were gorgeous archways and beautiful, tapestry covered, and someone else can be in a long hallway, it's pristine, or it has nothing in it but, painted walls, and everyone's, who knows why and and you guys we were talking about the field last time.
Mm.
Some people have come into an area that it's very mountainous, and there are
Hmm.
waterfalls and there's streams and valleys. And there was one woman, I love her story. I think her mom had recently died, and then she passed over and had this experience. Her dog had also recently died, her mom and her dog. She had this experience where she's in this beautiful, lush green grass, the flowers are growing, they're singing, the flowers are singing the praises of, God. And I mean, it's just this beautiful experience. And her dog comes running to her, and she's like, Daisy. And, and the dog starts telepathically talking to her and is like, I'm so happy to see you. And she's like, I'm happy to see you, Daisy. And Daisy takes her to where she lives, and she's like, look, mom, look. And Daisy's house, Daisy told her, the dog told her that she was able to she got to create her house, or and she said it looked like our kitchen, like where her little bed
Oh, that
was.
is so funny.
And she's like, oh my gosh, Daisy, this is so cute. It looks like the kitchen. And Daisy's like, she's telling her she's so happy. And then Daisy's running on a beach then later, and she's with other dogs that this
Wait,
woman
did you just
had.
tell me there's beaches in heaven? Okay, good. I just wanted to
Yes,
double check.
dog was
Yeah.
dog
Otherwise,
was
I don't want to go there. So,
exactly right. And the dog is running with other dogs that this woman had had in her lifetime. And Daisy explains to her, well, of course I'm with the other dogs that you had. You're our person. Like, we all love you. And you are, I was so cute. Okay.
so cute.
I don't know if it's true or not, but it's so dang cute. I want to believe it. And she came back, and her daughter said, Mom, why didn't you see grandma? Like,
It's the dogs. Mhm.
and she's
Priorities.
like, oh, but she goes, well, we had more recently lost Daisy than mom, so maybe I just Daisy was right there in my consciousness or whatever. So I don't know. It's all really fun, and I think it's just important probably to read these with a grain of salt and a little bit of joy and a little bit of fun when we read them, and not take them super seriously, because there probably is a lot of personal stuff that's in these. um, and I've read these or listened to them, and I've thought, what a great God we have, who really allows us to have a very personalized experience, very personalized, and people come back with very personal messages. Um,
Yeah. And that's really, I mean, revelation, inspiration, mostly that's what it's about. It's personal. It's for you. So I feel like when it gets bigger and it's people start applying it to large groups and large
Yep.
people, that's when things begin to get a little bit more twisted and we should be a little more careful. So,
mhm.
um,
Right. When the ego gets involved, like this is what I saw,
right,
this is what's going to happen. And they become like some type of prophetic voice trying to
exactly.
grab some type of following. Like, this is how it's going to be. Listen
There
to
have been people.
me.
There are certain people currently dealing with ramifications of that legally.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that's a really good distinction, right? Is
Right.
when that's a pretty obvious one when you see it, but yes, someone who's
Well, it
doing
should
it
be, but
for
it's not always. A lot
right.
of people fall into that trap. And I think that there is an important line to be drawn between something like that and somebody experiencing a universal truth.
Mhm.
Like, you should love people
Yes.
and
Mhm.
not cause harm. I'm like,
Mhm.
Yes, this is a given. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's prophetic, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah. The major themes that we come away with, right?
Well, speaking of
right,
the themes, I wanted to ask you what if you were to just like lay out some of
distill.
the most common themes, what are they?
Okay. Well, one of the big ones, right, is love. Um, that and success is another theme that people seem to come back talking about, that success is not what I thought it was, right? I thought it was the accolades, I thought it was the awards, I thought it was the degrees and the, all the things I'd accomplished that gave me a sense of, my personal power and
Achievement.
achievement. And people find that those things are, it's not that they're useless or that they're not important. It's just that those aren't the things that they're asked, where was your heart? What
Yeah.
did you do with your life? Where was your heart? Um, my friend that I've talked about, who had like 6 heart attacks and a couple of near-death experiences, he said that's the first question he was asked by Christ is, where is your heart? And he just thought, oh my gosh, where is my heart? And really had to think about how to answer that question. So I would say issues of, and when people realize what's really important in their lives, often they'll come back and there'll be a lot of shifts and changes in their lives. There are, I can't remember what the stats are, but it's high. It's something like 50 to 60% of people that have near-death experiences um, have divorces. And that's just because they're no longer in simpatico with their partner. My my level, my way of seeing the importance that I, adhere to certain things is very, very different, say, than my partner's now. And we're not agreeing on really important, purposeful, meaningful conversations we're having, right? Those kinds of
Yeah,
things.
that makes
Um,
sense.
so so love, love everyone and everything, non-judgment, huge theme.
I have a question
Obviously,
for you about this whole love and non-judgment thing. Has this changed the way that you view God or Jesus? Because I know for me it has. I dove in, deep dive into near-death experiences after my son passed away. I mean, I was reading so many different ones, and that was the common theme I found as well. This is just this savior of love, and like even during the life review, you didn't make good choices. Jesus isn't there condemning you. He's like you feel safe with him, even though you're embarrassed about what you did. Like he's not really judging you. You're kind of judging yourself, and then you know what to do from there. Like
He's
he's just there to
advocating
support
for
you.
you.
Yeah. And
yeah.
so that was really huge for me because I was like, you know, you go to church and you grow up in the 80s and 90s where it's more of a punitive God that's taught.
The God of
You
consequences,
lead
judgment.
and you motivate by fear. And now I feel society and church has shifted to more we motivate by love. But still, it's hard to kind of pull those things out of my subconscious when they've been planted so firmly. So I'm reading about this Jesus of love, and I'm like, it really is about love. Like charity is, love God and love your fellow man. That really is the most important thing.
Well, right. And I also think that we're literally changing the way that we see Christ based on the series The Chosen that came
Oh,
out, right?
100%.
Let's talk about that.
Oh,
That's
we should do a whole
yeah.
episode on it somehow. We can work that in.
I just
We'll
watched,
interview
yeah,
Jonathan
watched,
Remy. We'll do that.
uh,
No problem.
I just watched an interview with Jonathan Rumi, and I thought, man, every interview I see him in, he just keeps getting better and better. He's such a beautiful human and so humble, and just really wants to play that. He says, I don't think about what Jesus would do. I just have to play it with in truth.
Yeah.
I play these moments in truth, and so what he's coming up with is this individual who is so confident, right? So confident in who he is, and yet is like, he's so everything, right? He's so perfect. He's so kind. He's so generous. He's so um
Honest.
honest, and yeah, all these things. So yes, it has definitely changed me to the point that sometimes I read scripture and I have a hard time knowing if what I'm reading is true.
Lines up. Yeah, lines up.
Carrie, have you ever had an experience reading, like, because we talk about the Old Testament is the God of, more of a God of wrath, and the New Testament God is a God of love and peace. Do you ever think, because like we've done work with Afghan refugees and their culture is a harsher culture. And so maybe the culture back in the Old Testament times was one where you don't motivate people by love. That doesn't you need to motivate them by fear. Like law of Moses, you got to scare them a little bit. And so the writers of the book are like, we're talking about putting things through your own lens. They're getting this revelation from the spirit and they put it into their punitive lens because that's how
Right.
you get stuff done. And that's how you motivate your people.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a
Right.
very common theme in biblical scholarship,
Yeah.
that it often gets taken out of context because we look at it with a Western perspective.
Hmm.
And it's not. I mean, everybody has a bias, even people incredibly enlightened, and they're writing to a specific audience who also has a specific world perspective. And that perspective changes radically over time. And the Old Testament is divided from the New Testament by hundreds of years. Like it's
Right.
Yeah.
not
And
a, they're not next to each other.
it's that same filter and lens and perspective that we were talking about, right? It's happening and anachronistically, like at a different time. And I don't want to get it wrong, like I don't want to feel like, is this God of love that I'm so in love with and that I feel is so in love with me, right? We should, if we have that personal relationship, we all feel like, oh, I'm in love with him and he's in love with me too. This is great. I feel it. I don't, am I wrong? I don't want to be wrong. I love, he's awesome, And so sometimes I read scripture and I think, interesting. But I don't know. Like, I don't want to be too soft on myself,
Right.
but I can say too, as a therapist, it feels right when what I'm working with folks on is loving themselves. It doesn't, when we berate, when we beat ourselves up, when we live in the past, when we live in negativity, I don't know what good it does. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I come on that. I just, yeah, this God of love, he's pretty awesome. And and it doesn't take responsibility away, right? There's
Right.
I won't go into this very far, but there's a guy, he's actually passed now, but he was a psychiatrist. Gosh, I can't remember his name. He wrote these little books. And one of them that I like is on depression. And he talks about guilt in one of his little, in the chapters. And um, he says, do you know what the antidote to guilt is? And the answer is accountability. That's the antidote.
Yeah.
Like we can spin, we can have shame, we can go down, but the antidote to it is responsibility. So to me, that seems like very much in line with this God of love who says, yeah, there are things that sometimes we might do that aren't great. Well, what are you going to do about it? Are you gonna mire in it? Are you gonna
Right.
no, take responsibility and move on, figure it
I
out?
feel like it goes really far back to, not really far, but like it all falls back on balance in all things. Like God is a God who operates out of love. I really honestly believe that's a fundamental universal law
Yeah.
of like
Yeah.
all creation, right? But
Yes.
also he's a God who operates by rules, and those rules have to be followed because he's also a God of justice.
Yeah.
So it's one of those beautiful paradoxes that we have to live in between. He is a God of absolute love and mercy, but also absolute justice. He follows laws and rules and he lays those out and he upholds those. And then it's up to us to uphold ourselves to those things too, to live within that context in order to fulfill certain things. Like by doing so, you become
Yes.
something, right?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And people cross over into this realm of love, like love is emanating from everything, right? The flowers are emanating love. The grass. I love these stories that are like, people are like, the grass was
Oh,
love. The sun, there's no sun because God is the sun. So there's always, and oh, I love the one that was like the perfect temperature,
Yes, me too.
not
And it
too
smells like
hot,
flower,
not
like that
too cold,
fragrance.
you know? Yeah. Everything. The breeze feels, it's the perfect temperature, the breeze is. And I mean, what's not to love about all this stuff? Love is, the, oh, when there's angels singing and they're tones and chords and notes we've never heard, and the colors of green and blue, and they'll say, I don't even know what color that was. It's a color I've never seen, but it's somewhere
Mhm.
between, gosh, I don't even have words for it. That's another common theme, that people do not have adequate words to describe. They say, I'm doing my best here, but I literally can't describe what I felt or what I was seeing or the experience that I had. Um,
Or how to express how time works on the other side.
right.
Right. It's a relative thing, so that would make perfect sense.
The way that
What are you
I've
related to?
understood it from the book, from the near death experience, is that like when you're reading a book, like you're only the present page is the most important page. That's the present, and then you are done with it, and it goes back, and so now it's like that's in the past, and our brains kind of push it to where it has less like prominence. But on the other side, time, like the past and the present, can all be like the page that you're on. It's like all the pages are standing up, and the past is just as real as it was when it happened as it is now, and you can access it. So that's kind of how I understand it a little bit, is like the pages of the book. You know, when you read it and you're like, it's like in the past, I don't really remember all the details. It's like all the pages can stand up. Like I can access something that happened 20 years ago and it
Mhm.
feels just as real as what just happened 20 seconds ago.
Mhm.
Okay, I like that. The idea of the book. Yes, I don't know that there is past, present, and future. I don't know.
I know, and that's what I've read too. And so how do you even explain it? But it's, I know that they can retrieve, the past is not like buried long ago. It's like just as present as the
Well,
present.
because you don't have the physical limitation of a brain. You don't
What would
have
that
the
be
brain in
like?
a
Oh, I
physical
can't even
body.
understand it.
It's a perfect recall because you don't have age, you don't have forgetfulness, you don't have neurons that have to fire to retrieve information.
Yeah.
It's there because it's within your memory. It's within your
Yeah.
file. It's like being a computer digitally, right? You're just like, there it is. Hold up.
Mhm.
Well, it's like
So
that episode we did with Doug. The information field is all just accessible.
right.
Mhm.
It works at the speed of thought. That's how the spirit world functions, is at the speed of thought,
Hmm.
which is fast.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
fast.
yeah, and yeah, no, it's so interesting. I don't know if it's like yeah, I want to go back. And I just, this is, God knows this is a wish of mine, that I want to go back and just see my little 2-year-old in her little fluffy panties and her little princess shoes running through the house with nothing else on but that, and saying, I'm a boo-foo, I'm beautiful, I believe that we can go back
Me
and
too.
live these moments, these precious
Right.
moments that, we don't, that we believe we've forgotten the essence of. So I don't
Yeah.
know.
It's all in the
Um,
master file.
I
It's all back.
love the whole, yeah, and there's so much now, right, on on time and what do we call it? Like the metaphysical and the um
Yeah.
yeah.
Time really is absolutely relative. Like we can I think we go into this with the episode with Doug where like you can
Oh,
measure it. It's different. Right now they're having issues with the moon because like the gravitational field of the moon is different from the Earth. So the time in those places, it does not function the same. And it's really hard to get a clock on the moon. But if you don't have a clock on the moon, how are you going to measure stuff? Like, how are you going
uh,
to make your instruments and your experiments work? So it
Hmm.
really is. You can measure mountain tops versus valleys, the time literally moves different. It moves slower on a mountain and faster in the valley. It's bizarre. People live longer lives at higher elevations than they do at lower ones. It's so
oh,
weird. But yeah, it's absolutely a relative concept that we construct
this is why
to
we need you
live
here,
our
Elle.
lives.
You're our resident scientist.
Just so
Um,
critical.
so just looking at some of the other themes, let's see. I remember, well, there's a lot of people who float above their bodies and kind of are watching the scene below.
Right.
They're, and then I remember when my boyfriend Chuck died of leukemia and I came to the hospital in San Francisco. Um, I remember driving like a bat out of hell through the night to get there. I knew I was arriving to see his dead body. It's not like I was arriving to say goodbye, but I remember sitting there on the bed. He was laying there on the hospital bed, and I kept having, I was 19 years old. I kept turning around and seeing this clock behind me, but realizing I wasn't turning around to look at the clock. And I did it like 3 times, and I didn't think about it until after it was all over. But after I'd left the hospital, and what happened was that when I got the book and read the book Life Everlasting, I read in there that after death, often the spirit will follow the body until it goes to its final resting place. And so then it occurred to me, and I've heard you talking on other podcasts with people about this, that like, oh, after the fact, you're like, oh, putting the pieces together. That's what was going on. I think he was probably behind me. And I kept turning around to, I was sensing this presence, but I thought I was looking at the clock, and I wasn't. I didn't care about the time at all. Right. So
Yeah.
that seems to be a theme of people following their body to the hospital, or they watch as they're being revived, or, all kinds of things around that. Oh, there's a great story that is an evidence prover of the woman who died. She was in a hospital room. She raises up above the hospital, and she sees tennis shoes on the ledge, or maybe
Yeah.
it was a single tennis shoe on
I
the
think it
ledge.
was shoes because I've heard this story. I think it was a pair of shoes.
And she comes back in. She's trying to tell the doctors and nurses after she came back that I died, and I rose above, and I think someone along the way said, all right, fine, if that's true, that we should be able to find those shoes up there. And they actually, I don't know if they went up with a helicopter or what they did, but they went up there, and there were the shoes right there. So um that's one of those, definitely, that one's,
Proved you wrong.
you can
Yeah.
find that on Google. That was a really, really good one. If anyone needs evidence that the light itself seems to be truth and be knowledge itself, that people feel that when they are in the light, or getting closer to the light, especially the brightness of the light. And I think the light can be different, what do I want to say? I don't know, frequencies, or light levels,
Intensities.
like lower lights, and like a more intense light. And that as people get closer to kind of a celestial type realm, or what people have called sometimes the city of God, and they're maybe stopped, they're not able to go further,
All the
right?
way.
They realize, and that thread you're talking about, that golden cord, is probably getting thinner, and also just that when we're on the other side, we're not privy to all kinds of information, especially if we're not
Right.
staying, or we're not privy to being able to cross over to certain areas, if if we don't necessarily belong there. So but that's really a beautiful theme, is this idea that the light itself holds wisdom and knowledge and truth.
Right. There there are a lot of different experiences that follow, you know, people coming back from having these amazing visions or these amazing, experiences that they have. Um, what have you gained from reading about that? What have you learned from the post NDE story?
Yeah. What people have learned. Sorry, what was the question?
Like what comes back with them?
Oh, yeah. A lot of people claim, well, they more than claim. They have shown that they have certain gifts that they come back with. One of my friends, he now has, when he died and was kind of floating through the hospital hallways, uh, he wrote a book called I Knew Their Hearts, and he knew what everyone was experiencing. He said he passed one woman, and he knew she'd just been through a devastating breakup, and he passed somebody else and knew that a parent had died and he passed somebody, he knew their kind of their happiness. One woman was about ready to get married and he knew that. And so,
The ultimate empath.
yeah,
Yeah.
so as he's out of body and having this experience before he went back to his body, he's able to just know people's hearts and know what's happening for them. And he brought that back to a certain extent. And some people will say that it lasts for a long period of time, and other people it might be really kind of profound when they first come back, and then maybe it slowly filters away from them. I suppose if they maybe worked on it and wanted it to stay. People also have a lot of the knowledge that they had of the experience. Sometimes they're even told that they won't remember everything, and then they don't. It's probably mostly that, just being able to understand, being super empathic. Do you guys actually, I'm trying to think, do you know of other gifts that people have talked about?
Yeah, I even just my limited awareness, I feel like there's some common ones generally are a broader perspective and understanding people that are able to perceive what people are doing or thinking and into their hearts, like you're saying. But also a lot of people seem to come back with like my gift. Like the gift of spiritual communication, the gift of spiritual awareness, more a higher level of sensitivity. And
Yeah.
personally, I would theorize that that is because they're aware of it. They're aware of the reality of it. Because really, the
Mm,
most key part in operation for this particular gift of spirit communication is knowing that it's there and being able to shift your awareness to perceive it. And once they've already perceived it, they know what that feels like. They know
Yeah.
what that is. They know where it is. And it is much easier to be able to see it, to find it, right? So I have heard a lot of people coming back with much stronger connection or awareness of the other side.
wow. See, I love all your theories, and you make it sound so easy, like, oh yeah, once you have the knowledge and you once had the ability, that it's present. I've always thought of it as like this massive gift that's given, but maybe it's just an
Strange
awareness.
unattainable thing. It is a bit of both. I mean, there are people who are generally more sensitive and more, I mean, it's like any other skill. There are people who are really artistic, and then there are people who learn to be artists, right? So you might have a flair for it or propensity for it or an instinct for it, but still, like anything else, it only takes you so far, and then the rest of it has to be learned behavior, right? Has to be
Mm,
improved upon. So if
yeah.
you were able to really fully experience what it is to create art, like what that is, then you'd be like, oh, I can do that again. I know what that feels like. So it's just really a shift in perspective of the world, a shift in understanding of how something functions and belief that it can, because they know the reality of it. They've seen it, they've experienced it, right? That's the biggest obstacle to intuitive gifts is believing. So
Yeah. No, and that just reminded me of my friend that I've talked about who had all the heart attacks. He had maybe, I think he did after his near-death experience, and it's kind of dissipated a little more now, but he said there was a window of time where in prayer he could ask any question and get it answered.
Wow.
That
it's a
would
sensitivity.
would be
Yeah.
amazing. And he said, I had to be careful because there were times I'd ask a question and I would get a real download of information, and um it would kind of knock my socks off sometimes. He said I had to be careful what I asked for because I was but yeah, so really pretty cool stuff. But a lot of people just really do say they they've come to their home. It's like going home. And once they have been there, it's really hard to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you
Like a
know,
homesickness. That depression
Mhm.
is something we've talked about. We had another guest, Heather, on the podcast who did have more of an out of body type experience, NDE, and it was we discussed this at some length that there's oftentimes negative side effects that occur post NDE. A lot of people experience like disillusionment of
Mhm.
Yeah.
reality as well.
Depression.
Yeah. After my brother died, and I haven't really talked about that, but um, he died when he was 32 years old. It's been about 14 years ago now. But after he died, I he came to me one night when I was I'd been writing a book for my family, and it was just a book. It was a poem really about his life, and he was a very loving human being. And so I put together this poem, and it was kind of this like thread through the book, and then I had pictures of him from the time he was little until his age 32 when he died. And during the 4 months that I was putting the book together, I really felt him with me. Although, again, in hindsight, I think I realized that he'd been with me a lot more than I realized it at the time. Although I do know that during that 4 month period, there were these moments where, like, he was just there. I was watering the flowers one day, and I heard him say, "You missed a spot," or just fun little things like that. I was eating a bowl of cereal one day, and he gave me a line for the book. Those kinds of things. But what happened was, it was Christmas, the night before Christmas Eve, actually. I'd finished the book. I was getting ready to get it sent off, and I wanted it done for his death anniversary, which was going to be in February. So I'd sent it off to the publisher, or whatever, the little, it was probably mixed book or something. And I went to bed that night, and I had a dream about him. And in the dream, and this had been 2 years since he had died, because I didn't start writing the book until a little bit after. But in the dream, he was alive and present, and he looked so great. He was a big guy, and he worked out and stuff. He looked strong and beautiful. He was wearing this like black turtleneck. He was, just happy and joyful. And when I woke up in the morning, the dream was very, very vivid. When I woke up in the morning, I was devastated to realize, oh, he's gone. He's really gone. And I think what was happening is that I was having a fuller realization. No, the book is done. You're finished writing. And he actually is now going to leave. It was horrible to realize, wait, he's been with me this whole time, and I'm done with the book, and now he's probably going to leave me. And I started crying, and my tears were just covering the pillow. The pillow was just so wet. And as I'm bawling my eyes out, I suddenly just I just stopped. Like, the tears just kind of stopped. And I knew that right there next to me, he was standing right there. And it was like, oh my gosh, you're here. I was like, oh my gosh, you're here, And I was just saying, I love you. I love you. I love you. I'm going to miss you so much. I'm going to miss you. And every time I said, I love you, he was just like, I love you. And I was like, I love you. And he was like, I love you. And it was this beautiful experience. And I feel like what I was feeling, this was not earthly love. This was like a heavenly divine love. So I feel like I was feeling almost like the Savior's love, but somehow through my brother as a conduit. And it is just flowing into me. And all these thoughts are coming to me like, oh my gosh, if we loved this way, there would be no war. There would be no ill. There would be no malice. There would be no child abuse. I'm going on and on and on. Like, oh my gosh, if we felt this way every day, there would be nothing wrong. Um, just an amazing feeling. And I don't even know why I told that story.
That
Yeah,
was
that's
amazing. I'm
a
glad
Like,
you
phenomenal
did.
story.
um, just wow, I don't even remember where we were.
You were talking about how near-death experiences can cause this disillusionment because you have this incredible
Thank
experience.
you. Thank you,
Right.
Camille. So after that, yes, I was really depressed.
Like the loss of the connection.
I was super depressed because to feel that kind of love, and I'd felt it one other time, and I'd felt it also at his casket 2 years prior, a really, really powerful experience like that. Um, this was even more. This was like times two. But yeah, it was really, it's kind of been hard at times to think that is the kind of love that exists on the other side. And we just don't access it here very easily. I
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
love to have that, like, Kyle, where are you, bud? Come back, like, bring that love back, because that's what we're all waiting for, you know.
Right. It is the deepest desire of the human heart. Absolute connection, understanding, forgiveness, acceptance,
Mm-hmm.
love, right?
Unconditional love. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unconditional love. Yeah. So Huge theme. Love is everything, right?
It's been really cool having this conversation, and we decided to have Carrie back for a third episode in a few weeks to talk about out of body experiences. There's a whole bunch of content we didn't get to cover today that we want to with Carrie because she's been setting up on this stuff for so long.
Go over what those are, Carrie. Kind of let people know what to expect in the future from you.
Yeah.
Yes. So out of body experiences and an NDE, a near death experiences would be considered one of those actually, right? So because an out of body experience is just it's by location. It's being in two places essentially at the same
Right. Your
time.
spirit
However,
consciousness leaves your body and it has a
yes.
separate experience from your body.
Yeah, and it is interesting that they call it NDE and OBE, but with an OBE,
Out of body experience.
yes, an out of body experience. Yes, your spirit has left your body. Your heart is still beating. Yeah, it's the same as no, with a near death experience, you're dead.
You're dead.
So
So
it's
with an
different.
out of body experience, your cord is still firmly attached. Your spirit, for
Yes.
whatever reason, has just exited your body and it has
Mhm.
entered another plane or another area.
Yes, and people have gone to Mars and Jupiter and
All the
other
things.
planets and stars. So anyway, that's really interesting.
That's
OBE,
fascinating.
very fascinating. We also have SDEs. Those are shared death experiences. And shared death experiences are when someone has an out of body experience at the same time. This is one of the definitions of it. As a loved one who is having a near death experience. So a loved one dies, their spirit leaves their body, and the person that is maybe sitting there at bedside grieving with them leaves their body, has an out of body experience. It's a shared death experience. And then the person that is dying goes on, the cord is cut, they go on, and the person that had the shared death experience their spirit goes back into
That's
them.
intense because you have the
Yeah.
double grief of having to come back to real life and then you lose somebody, but also an amazing experience, I'm sure.
I've heard a lot of those with things like accidents where you're in a car crash together with someone, but they they go on and you get turned back. Like your time's not yet. You you get to stay.
That happened to my friend Jeff Olson, who was the one flying around the hospital.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
and then the last one is spiritually transformative experiences. And, you know, those are really, really powerful experiences where someone might not actually, their spirit might not leave their body. I don't even know. Those are interesting. We can look at those as
Broad
well.
category maybe.
They're
Mhm.
learning really powerful truths and aren't exactly sure how
How?
that happened.
Almost like a visionary experience or something.
Yeah. And dreams and visions, they're all super
Yeah.
cool. So there we
Wow.
go.
Well, okay. Well, so we have some good stuff to like leave as a teaser, but we're so glad you could come back and we will see you again shortly.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And if you guys want to get in touch with us in the meantime, we've got our website, which is throughtheveilpodcast.com and our Facebook group. So,
Right. And possibly soon to come an active Instagram profile. And as always, if you would like to schedule a session with either Camille or I, please get in contact with us and or questions, comments, what you'd like to hear about on the podcast. And if you would like to be a guest, we probably won't tell you no. So we love to collect people. And until then, we'll see you next time.
bye.
Bye.